Hello, everybody. Um, Today, as part of Shakti, we're going to talk about how to influence people without authority. Now, for those of you who don't know what Shakti is, it is a unique, wonderful community of organizational leaders, business experts, and thought leaders who have valuable experience and world-class perspectives to solve daily business problems. We do have a secret sauce for everything. So today we have two guests really. We have Deepa Kartha. She's the president, Reflection Info Systems and CEO of Journeys by Zinda, and Atul, who's a founder of Leadership at Humanity. So Deepa and Atul, do you want to take a minute to share anything additional about yourself?
Hey, thanks, Deepa. Thanks for the introduction. Nothing, I'm ready to go. Very excited about the topic, so ready to get started.
Thanks, same here, Deepa. It's a great topic, something very close to my heart, and looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Okay, so now I've always wondered, what does it mean when you say influence people without authority? Can one of you please?
Maybe I'll start with that, and I look forward to Deepa building on that. So I think the whole concept of authority, as I worked through my own career journey over 30 years in different parts of the world, large corporations, big global roles, regional roles, more and more I kind of got involved with making choices, decisions in our leadership roles. And especially when I started leading large teams, and sometimes people you never meet, but they're part of your extended team, you realize that the concept of authority itself is a binary concept. It means that for you to have authority, somebody needs to give you that authority. And it means also someone is losing out something to empower you to make choices and decisions on their behalf. And I realized pretty early on that that's not sustainable. However, not very many leaders really reflect on it at the right time of their careers, and they continue thinking that that's the only way to take people along, to make choices, to make quick decisions. But this disposition is not sustainable, as especially in the face of current unpredictability and ambiguity with which this world is right now dealing with. It's an unsustainable platform to lead with authority. So the concept itself, to my mind, is flawed, and it needs to be addressed.
Great point, Atul. Early in my career, earlier in my career, the initial thought when you start leading a team is, hey, you are able to say something and they will follow your instructions. The reality is that that doesn't really work out at all. One of the things that one of my mentors told me very early is sell, not tell, right? So even when you have people reporting to you, it is always better if it becomes their idea rather than it becomes your idea and they have to execute on it, right? So that influencing without authority, so the influencing is needed, whether it's your own team and obviously when you're working across departments or divisions or companies or organizations or what have you, then it becomes definitely important. But even at the most minute level of a team, that influencing is very important because, especially with the new generation, you really have to sell the concept rather than tell people what to do, and you cannot expect them to follow you. So, from my perspective, it is important no matter what you do.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So yeah, so sell, not tell. What a great way of kind of condensing the whole meaning of influencing without authority in three simple words. So why I think we've kind of addressed why the skill is important, right? Because we really cannot um, be authoritative in all situations, especially in today's world where Atul kind of said that it's unsustainable. So when was the first time that you both realized the importance of the skill? You've been, you've had a fairly long journey in various capacities, right? So when did you actually realize the importance? For me, though, it's only been in the last 10 years that I've realized that influencing is way more important than actually being authoritative. But I'm kind of wondering if that's the case with you both, or you have a different story.
Yeah, I can take that first. So as I was mentioning, right, when I initially started managing a team, um, it was the one thing that I did realize very, very early on is, I could always say, hey, this is what we need to do and instruct people to do something. But then the reality was that, if for people to really have their heart in it and actually be able to own it and run with it, they have to own it, right? So that whole perspective of when you have a goal or an objective or whatever, right? Having that ability to talk to people so that they realize that it is not just something that is coming down from the top, but it is something that is important for their development, their career, and how they can actually play a big role in making the company succeed, right? So that was something that I had to uh, do early on. So that involved basically having conversations at the very beginning, so that everybody understands what's going on, to hearing people's perspectives and hearing people's concerns in a lot of the cases, because again, just because something is a goal doesn't mean that everybody is on board with it, right? So it involved the whole point of having the conversations, hearing people's perspective, really debating a lot of those kind of things, to get to a point where people are bought in versus something that you have to do. When it's something that you have to do, whether it's your team or your peers or even your family, when it's something that you have to do, it is hard to motivate people, right? It's really hard. But when it's something that they want to do, then it becomes a totally different matter altogether. Atul, when did you start, realizing this?
So first, I love this, terminology you're using, have to do versus want to do. I mean, that's something which is relevant in every aspect of life, and not only in the workspace, as you rightly said. My realization of the fact that people connect with who you are versus connecting with what you do was very early on in my career. In fact, everything I'm doing today, I call about or talk about building and nurturing your personal core or expanding your personal capacity enables you to really lead through any situation versus using authority or building skills or capabilities. And very early on, I started my career in a factory as an industrial relations officer in a very aggressive manufacturing environment back home in India. And I was 21 years old, finishing my MBA, going in as IR officer, and got hackled like first week, and was shit scared to be in that factory. I mean, I almost had a phobia going every morning to a plant where I'll have these very aggressive union leaders, and there was a clear divide between the management and the workers. And I, as an IR officer, was the face of that management to this set of people. And whatever position I held, or my MBA degree or all that, Deepa, didn't really help anyways to establish any connection with these people. Till the time there was one of the union leaders. I was in Chandigarh, and our factory was on the outskirts. His wife needed blood in a hospital in Chandigarh. And I just reached out as a human being, someone who could help. I had my friends, I just kind of graduated from a college, to support this guy who was in a hospital. And I saw things starting to change after that. Nothing happened. I mean, it was not very dramatic. We just went and helped. Things got over. Then I started getting invitations for the birthdays of workers' children on Sundays. And I started going there. Then I started getting people to come and just chat with me, not press for any issues or any help they need. And that started strengthening my belief that they are connecting with me for the person I am, not the role I'm doing. And the influence you can have by being a human being people or others can connect with is much more stronger than the position or the authority or the telcel or anything you can do. So I started kind of living a slightly different life in a corporate environment, trying to show up early on who I was so that people can quickly connect with you and find those bonds. And I can tell you in multiple transitions in my life, living and working in most continents in this world, this is one thing which has just stuck with me. People will connect with you if you show them who you are, versus trying to tell them the power you wield or the authority you wield of your position.
Oh, absolutely. That is right on. That is right on, Atul. And I want to, one of the other things, which kind of um, changed changed me a little bit more is, you know, technology, right? I'm a technology person, right? So we had this whole agile transformation kind of thing that happened a few years ago, right? And before that, everything was waterfall, very, very fixed. And then, I worked for banks that were like very aggressively going after markets and all of that. And then in that mode, I was very used to leading from the front, right? Okay, can we do this? Yes, we can, guys. Let's go do it. That kind of stuff. And then what happens? What happened with the whole agile transformation is that you had to kind of change the whole leading from the front kind of business to kind of say, oh, let's actually give everybody a chance, let people make mistakes and take on risks and fail. You kind of stay on the side and support people, right? So that actually really reinforced the whole thing for me as well, where all of a sudden it's like, you are relying on, instead of you relying on your own skills, you are relying on everybody else to be successful. And in that kind of a mode, influencing becomes even more important, right? Because before it'll be like, hey, I can model my behavior and then, have everybody follow me or whatever. And now I really have to step back and say, okay, you guys lead, I'm there for you to support you, right? And at that point in time, there was no telling anymore at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's great. Thanks for sharing that, both Deepa and Atul. So you both have kind of gone through when you realize the importance of having to influence people and reaching out to them and helping them understand who you are as opposed to what your role is. How has this skill, this is what you kind of explained is more in the workforce, but how has the skill played a critical role in things that you do outside of work? I'm pretty sure that wherever we go, right, whether we go someplace to shop or wherever we go, this kind of skill comes in really handy, right? Like back in India, when you go and ask them to show you saris, so you need to influence them so that they can show every single sari that you like, so that you can pick the best one. So likewise, I'd love to hear other areas where this has come in handy. Yeah.
I love the sari analogy, by the way. I've been in those situations with my wife, so I can almost connect how to influence a salesperson. But it's actually, Deepa, very, very uplifting I mean, I feel it's actually very easy, very simple. It makes your life much more easier. I mean, I feel people kind of going through that very difficult phase of uh, doing and being differently. So there is a personality who you are. Then there's a need or a desire to show up as somebody you want to be in that setting. And that's a constant pressure every time on you. And I've seen that in the work situations, great people, but the moment they move into a work environment, they want to fit in, they want to show up in a certain way. They use certain terminology. I mean, jokingly, people used to say long time, 15 years back in my career, I was in Europe at that time, if the CEO of the company was sporting a beard, if you see a lot of bearded people in the organization, because you want to fit in, you want to be aligned to a certain view. But I think once and by the way, in the social settings too, I mean, imagine the awkwardness of walking into a party you're invited to, and there are a lot of strangers around you, and you want to join a conversation, and then you're forcing yourself into a conversation which you're not comfortable with. How many times you see that? And I can tell you, once you free yourself up from that, you make a choice that I want to show up as a person I am. On the contrary, I want others to know about me sooner or faster so that I can build that connection. It just makes life easier for you.
Yes.
So you move into a new setting, you just show up as who you are, let people feel and experience you as you are, and then they connect with your core. They don't connect with how you look, what you wear, what you eat, and how you talk. And that makes the transition actually much easier in every space, including the sari store.
Actually, I would beg to differ with Atul on this piece, right? So let's talk about, so I'm a mom, 3 kids. You know, initially when the kids were young, they make a big fuss. It's like, do this because I tell you so. Because you're like, why? Because I tell you so, right? So and then eventually that slowly started changing, because initially, they would agree, and then later it's like, okay, that I tell you so is not going to work. So talking about who you are, or starting with who you are, what I found is that, that is almost secondary for me. For me, the first part is always to understand the situation and understand who the other person is, and see if I can meet them where they are a little bit, and then eventually introduce myself as to who I am, right? So let me give you a perfect example. So I teach yoga and dance. Okay. So when I'm in doing yoga, or when I'm teaching yoga, if I go there and say, whoa, let's do yoga, it doesn't work out, even though that might be who I am as a person, right? Or if I'm going and teaching dance and saying, guys, let's figure out how to have fun, that doesn't work either, right? So what I found is that, again, with the kids and with all the other scenarios, what I found is that I need to assess the situation a little bit first and figure out what is needed for that situation, and kind of start with that. And then, eventually, again, they will figure out who I am. But either way, I'm doing it from a perspective of wanting to do the right thing, not necessarily, hey, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to get. There's a little bit of a difference, right? So anyway, that's my approach, which is fit into the situation, and then,
I think that's a great point, Deepa. And by the way, no approach to my mind is the golden rule of this is the way to do things. This is how you experience and how you grow. My sense is the pressure of showing up in a certain way, especially when you're not controlling your presence. I talk about senior leadership role, and you've been in those situations. You just cannot influence every movement of your contact with the broader world, because there is a certain audience that needs to see you in a certain way. And that creates, by the way, a lot of stress on people. A lot of stress. I've seen people spending time preparing for a conversation. They want to have they pick up the right words. They are preparing. I mean, I had a boss once, he had a mirror in his office. Before going for a town hall, used to stand in front of the mirror to see how I'm looking. Am I presentable to go to the people? And that was his focus on so-called execution excellence. But reality is that's too much pressure on you, and that shows. That also shows when you're not showing up as the individual or human being you are. People are smart to read that pretty quickly, and they can figure out what you're trying to be in. But having said that, being respectful, what I really like about what you said, Deepa, is being respectful of where the other people are, and giving that space, or creating that space for them to connect with you is equally important. It can't be, this is who I am and you leave it or take it. It has to have a connection with others.
I have a question. One thing, Deepa. I have a question for Atul. I'm wondering, does it have something to do with the fact of being focused on yourself versus the empathy?
So actually, that is a great question. Actually, to me, it's the other way. It's the other way, where you lose focus on yourself. The focus on yourself is actually, how do you want to show up? How do you influence? How do I take them along? How do I make sure that they accept what I'm going to say? So all the time, Deepa, you're processing in your head. Even if when you're talking to me, I'm processing what is going to be my next statement so that you walk with me.
Right.
And I think that's focus on yourself. The moment you get out of that, saying, I want to go, and by protecting the dignity of the other person, that's given to my mind. By protecting the dignity of the other person, you can still show up and say, this is my belief. And it doesn't mean that your belief is wrong.
Right.
This is how I see and look at things. It just creates a kind of a low stress situation for people to come together.
Right. Very, very good point. I think although you had differing views there, you both agree that in the end, who you are matters, and how you present yourself to others matters a whole lot. Now, are there any special methods that you'd employ, like at work? I'm more interested in the workplace, in meetings, or in other communication methods, while you use this particular skill. And what are some subtle things that you can do to actually influence people faster, right? So at times you don't have a whole lot of time to actually, if you are with a customer and you only have like an hour. So how do you use that time into? So anything along those lines that you can share here would be great.
Maybe I'll start, and then Deepa, feel free to build on it. I think there is, again, this misnomer that people have a personality and then they are who they are. To me, and I talk about Deepa Mohan in my context of building and nurturing your personal core. Your core is not what it is made or how you grew up. It needs to be constantly nurtured and developed and practiced as it is your skills and capabilities. So your question is a great question. How do people constantly remind themselves who they are? So compassion, Deepa, Kartha talked about empathy. This needs to be refreshed and practiced, to my mind. And there are multiple ways you can do that. And you can actually see reinforcements happening in the office. I mean, I remember, we had an office with 500 people on one big floor plate. Just smiling at people walking to your workplace. Just stopping for 30 seconds to acknowledge somebody who's wishing you, checking in on people, genuinely, by the way, not to show off that you're concerned for them, but genuinely being interested in the well-being of other people. It creates that genuine sense of empathy in you. And people observe that, people see that. They walk up to you. And by the way, that doesn't need any position. I think even a janitor or anyone in the office, as a matter of fact, can practice that compassion and empathy, which gives them this enormous amount of influence on what they want to do and how people will walk with them. So to my mind, I do tell people that your core needs to be nurtured, and it's not static. it's dynamic and it's evolving because you're getting new experiences, new exposure, you're meeting new people, you're getting into new environments. How do you constantly remind yourself what is your bigger purpose? How do you constantly replenish your energies? How do you constantly rebuild your empathy and compassion? And finally, remind yourself of the values which anchor you into who you are. And if that's happening, I think then, and people are practicing consciously or deliberately, you build that influence.
Great,
Fantastic. Yeah.
great points, Atul. Somebody is actually saying to me that, these mirror cells, which is, when somebody smiles at you, you cannot help but smile back, right? I mean, so there is one aspect of it, what Atul was talking about earlier, where again, you treat people with kindness and they will respond back, period, right? The other things that I practice are, I'm typically never the first person to talk in a meeting. I end up doing a lot of listening. I end up spending a lot of time on understanding where people are coming from, or trying to understand what's being said and not said. And a lot of that actually came from coaching from some of the agile coaches, which is, because a lot of the times we're like, what did they say? Because sometimes it's like, what did they not say, right? So when you're, especially when you're talking to customers and things like that, if you end up talking most of the time, you don't have the deal, right? So if they end up talking most of the time, then they are in it with you, and then you end up having a much better chance of winning a deal that you are doing all the talking, right? So my techniques are really to listen, trying to understand, where are they coming from, trying to pause and process without things that are in my head. So a lot of the times when people are saying, what do you think? I have to sit and think for a second, because I'm still in that listening mode where I haven't really come back with my opinion yet. So I do need a little bit of a pause, a couple of seconds before I can respond back, because I'm still processing what people are saying. So that is really my technique, if you will. Because with that, what happens is that, again, if you understand where people are coming from, then you have a much better chance of influencing them, convincing them, what have you, right? But if you don't, and if you just are there to say your piece, whether you're telling or selling, either piece, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So it's all about understanding the person and what is important for them, and then it's so much easier.
Yeah. That again goes back to empathy, right? Trying to understand where the other person is coming from, and trying to get into their shoes and figuring out what they exactly want, so you can meet the needs. So it's a lot easier for you to influence them.
And also,
Awesome.
also creating win-win situations, right? Because you don't want to be in a position where, hey, win, lose, lose, win, lose kind of thing, right? So the understanding and empathizing and all of that is one part of it, but being able to transform that into something where you are getting what you're looking for, the other person is getting the same thing too. Because if you're creating these win-win kind of situations, then influencing is easy, right? Because there is nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the ability to create that so that everybody is getting what they need. I think that is also a big piece of that whole influence piece. Again, whether it's with your kids or a workplace or wherever it is, right? Again, that's where understanding what the other person needs. Do they need attention? Do they need visible? What is it that they need?
Yeah. That also builds trust. And so I get reminded of this statement that I always hear, right, from other senior leaders in my company and outside. They keep telling me that in any conversation, it's the elevator pitch that you kind of convey as the value proposition, or like what you stand for, which is kind of crucial to build trust, which can later translate to influencing people without authority. I know Deepa Kartha kind of said that she would rather, pause and listen, and kind of she wants to understand where the other person is coming from before she opens up and to inform them who she is. So I am kind of more interested in hearing from Atul if he agrees to the statement, and also Deepa, what she thinks and what she's heard from other leaders, and if she has any counter arguments around this. So,
Against myself.
Yeah. So yes, I agree with what Deepa said. And my 30 years of working with people across the globe, two things which stood out for me. And I want to leave that message for your listeners or your viewers, Deepa. One, there are two specific needs of the people, no matter which geography, which level, which organization they work for. There's a need to affiliate and there's a need to be understood. Every human being, their need to connect is very, very strong. And their need to be understood is very, very strong. If as a leader, you are conscious about those needs and you are supporting those needs, your influence will grow. It's then a matter of time, how long does it take for you to build that level of trust, etc. So need to affiliate is making sure you include people in the conversations. And I think this is one very critical fallacy which we see in the systems where leaders believe they know something which others don't know. I don't need to check with everybody. I don't need a consensus. I mean, how many times we hear that? I got to make a decision. I can't wait for everybody. And it doesn't mean that you got to really get everybody's input. Maybe you can define boundaries early on in terms of whose decision is it, but reaching out and making sure that people feel affiliated, they feel their dignity is protected, is absolute critical given for a leader to build that trust. And two, the need to be understood. Deepa gave a great example of being in a meeting. Give space for people to say what they need to say and hear them or listen to them with an intention to understand. Even if you don't agree with a point of view, but listen to that conversation with an intent to understand other perspective will give you that huge kind of right of entry as a leader to be trusted.
Good points. Yeah, I will always remember this. Need to affiliate, need to be understood. So yeah. So Deepa, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yes, let me argue with myself now. Counterpoint, right? I think especially as a startup founder and especially as a woman, right? When you're going into a place full of strangers, it is very important that you place yourself in the right spot. Otherwise, people might not take you seriously. Otherwise, people might take you for granted, right? So I have been in several conversations where people would come in and just name drop universities, name drop this. I made $5 million, $50 billion. I did this, I did that. And even though for me personally, not a fan, the reality is that, now people are starting to place you in certain boxes in their minds, right? And you might only get one chance to get in that box. So one of the things that I have, been coached recently is make sure that you are bragging sometimes, And Deepa, you know that we have a series planned for Shakti where we are talking about elevator pitch and figuring out value proposition and all of that stuff, right? So one of the concepts that we talked about yesterday was humble bragging, right? How can you humble brag without just name dropping and without, how can you show up and say the right things without necessarily feeling as if you're a fake or whatever because you're bragging? I don't have the answer yet. I don't think I've figured out the technique to do that yet. I'm still on the other side, which is the thing that I said earlier, which is, I like to hear before I say anything. But that is one thing that I know, especially as founders, especially as women, it's something that we have to do. Again, because everybody just instantly judges you, instantly puts you on a spot. So part of having that elevator pitch, again, it's not like a standard elevator pitch, if you're in an elevator with the CEO, what do you say kind of thing? But the ability to articulate what your value is, Again, for me, it is being able to brag without bragging. It is important. So once I figure it out, I will definitely share it with you, Deepa.
Yeah.
With me
Yeah.
too, please, Deepa. I'm curious now. I got to have a follow-up conversation. All
Yes.
with you.
Yeah. Let's do a part two of this. Yeah.
Humble brag.
So yes. Yeah. The truth is that you only get a minute or two, and you need to use those 2 minutes to the best possible way you can. Without, it's like finding that right balance, right? Without bragging too much,
Right.
or yeah. So
Yeah, it's like
correct.
yesterday we had a discussion where somebody's like, I studied here, here, here. You know, people have already put in, okay, you're intelligent, you're this, you're that. You've already been put in a spot, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you're not able to articulate what you've done, you're basically starting from the bottom and you just slowly climb your way up, right?
Yeah. It takes longer.
That's a credibility aspect of it, right?
Yeah, sure. So, do you actually have any other personal stories that you'd like to kind of share? I know you already kind of gave some examples and uh, stuff like that, but anything else that will benefit the audience?
Nothing specific other than what I already shared, Deepa. I mean, stories and my early career journey, and I think that stuck with me throughout. So there's nothing to the contrary which came my way to tell me that was not right. You should change your perspective. On the contrary, I had more reinforcements through my multiple transitions.
Yeah, and I would say for me it is again I definitely the way I operate is I definitely do try to show up as myself, but definitely try to behave not behave but understand the audience and then try to adjust based on what their needs are, right? So for example, if it's a team that works in my if there are people that are working in my team, I want to make sure that, again, I am more patient, for example, or, make sure that everybody's being heard versus if you're in a conversation with a bunch of aggressive conversations, then you do need to jump in. So I'm a little bit more situational uh, as to how I decide to, so my behavior is intentional. It is not, but in all the cases, my approach is really, I'm not going to treat a person different. I'm going to treat the situation different and how I need to act different. But whether somebody's a CEO or whether somebody's a bus driver, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to treat them the same, but situations I do behave differently.
That's being smart, actually. I think not everybody can adapt to that. So, Deepa, very, very valuable input there. So, any closing comments from either of you?
Well, it was a great conversation, and every time I meet Deepa, I take something new with me. So new insights and more conversation for our next catch up, Deepa.
That's right, Atul. Same here. Every time we talk, definitely a lot of learnings for me as well. Deepa, thanks for organizing it and getting us together. Great questions.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Deepa.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you again. So let me quickly summarize.
Can,
So
can we do a little plug for our series as well, Deepa?
yeah, sure. So let me quickly summarize. There were several interesting points, but I want to kind of mention like a handful of them. Things like it's not sustainable to have authority, sell, not tell. No doubt, influencing people without authority is important. People are important. So people connect with who you are versus what you do. So in every space, this influencing is going to come in handy, whether it be work or outside, right? Always understand the context or the situation before you act or react. And core is of a person is constantly developed and nurtured. And that's very, very important. Empathy, compassion, active listening, pausing, and processing are extremely important. to influence people without authority. And there are two important things that we always need to keep in mind: need to affiliate and need to be understood. That's what every human being is interested in. And having that elevator pitch is key, but there is no one way to do it. So we're all learning every day. So that's kind of what we discussed today. I want to kind of take this opportunity to also talk about a workshop that we're going to be running as part of Shakti Real Talk. Deepa, please chime in as well. But it's like a 3-part series. It's on how to do the elevator pitch, right?
Articulate your value proposition, identify your strengths, and then deliver the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so we're going to be posting some messages all over, like in different social media, like LinkedIn, Facebook, and also we have a Shakti community WhatsApp. If you're interested in that, please ping us on Facebook. We'll be happy to add you there. It's an active group wherein we post interesting articles, but we hope to see you in that workshop. It's a great value add. It's going to be run by some of the senior leaders and board members of our org, and we hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.